If your peach, plum, or cherry tree is giving you fewer fruits every single year, I promise you it is not because of bad luck, bad weather, or a weak variety. It is because of one small mistake almost every backyard grower makes. And today I am going to show you the exact one spoonful fix that commercial orchard growers use to keep their trees fruiting heavier year after year, while your neighbor's tree slows down and eventually stops. Before we go any further, if you are serious about growing peaches, plums, and cherries that actually produce like a real orchard tree instead of just sitting there looking pretty, then hit that subscribe button right now because every single week I break down real practical field-tested techniques that most people either don't know or don't want to tell you. This channel is built for growers who want results, not just pretty pictures. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why your stone fruit trees slow down on fruiting after a few good years. What is happening underground and inside the tree that nobody talks about? And the simple one spoonful trick, along with the professional grower steps around it, that can bring your tree back to heavy, consistent fruiting season after season. This is not some gimmick or an internet myth. This is the same logic commercial growers use, just simplified so you can do it in your own backyard with things you probably already have. I want you to think back to when you first planted that tree, or when you first moved into a place that already had a mature peach, plum, or cherry tree growing on it. Those first couple of seasons, everything feels effortless. The tree seems to just know what it's doing. You water it when it looks thirsty, maybe you throw down some general purpose fertilizer once or twice a year, and the results are incredible. That early success is exactly what convinces so many growers that they've got this figured out, and it's exactly what makes the eventual slowdown feel so confusing and frustrating when it happens. I've talked to dozens of backyard growers over the years, and this exact story comes up again and again, almost word for word. No matter what climate they're in or what variety they're growing, the tree starts strong, coasts for a couple of years on the natural fertility that was already built into that soil or that root ball when it was planted, and then it hits a wall. Understanding why that wall exists is really the whole key to fixing this problem permanently instead of just patching it year after year with random guesses. Let's talk about the real problem first because you need to understand this before any trick or spoonful of anything is going to make sense to you. Most peach, plum, and cherry trees start out strong. The first 2 or 3 years, they explode with blossoms. The fruit set looks amazing. Your neighbors are jealous, and you feel like you have finally mastered stone fruit growing. Then year 4 or 5 hits, and suddenly the same tree that used to be loaded is now giving you half the fruit or the blossoms drop before they even turn into fruit. Or worse, the tree blossoms beautifully, but the fruit set is weak and patchy. This is the point where most growers panic. They start blaming the weather, they start blaming the variety, some even think the tree is diseased, and they either rip it out or they dump random fertilizer on it, hoping something sticks. But here's the truth nobody tells you at the nursery when they sell you that tree. Stone fruit trees are heavy feeders, and more specifically, they are heavy micronutrient feeders, not just heavy nitrogen or heavy water feeders. The soil around your tree, especially in a backyard setting, gets depleted of specific trace elements much faster than people realize, because every single year that tree is pulling minerals out of that same small root zone to build blossoms, to build fruit, to build the sugars inside that fruit. If nobody is putting those specific minerals back in a form the tree can actually use, the tree simply cannot keep manufacturing full crops. It is not stubbornness, it is not disease, it is depletion. The number one mistake I see growers make, and I made this mistake myself early on, is over-focusing on nitrogen. People see a tree that looks a little tired, and their first instinct is to throw a nitrogen-heavy fertilizer at it because nitrogen makes things green and makes things grow fast, but nitrogen pushes leafy vegetative growth. It does not push flowering, and it definitely does not push fruit set. In fact, too much nitrogen late in the season can actually work against you because the tree puts its energy into growing more branches and leaves instead of setting and holding fruit. The second big mistake is ignoring the soil pH and the boron and calcium levels around the root zone. Most backyard soil, especially soil that has had the same tree sitting in it for years without any real mineral replenishment, becomes deficient in boron. And boron is one of those elements that almost nobody talks about, but it is absolutely critical for pollen tube growth and fruit set in stone fruit trees. Without enough boron, your tree can blossom beautifully, but a huge percentage of those blossoms will never actually convert into fruit because the pollination process itself fails at a cellular level. The third mistake is watering habits. A lot of growers either underwater during the critical fruit set window or they overwater and wash out the very nutrients the tree needs, right when it needs them most, right at bloom time, and right after fruit set when the tree is deciding how much fruit it can actually support and hold on to. Now let's get into the actual science behind this, and I promise I will keep this simple because I am not here to give you a college lecture. I am here to give you what actually works. When a peach, plum, or cherry tree blossoms, that blossom has to be pollinated, and after pollination, the tree has to physically build the structure of a fruit using minerals and sugars pulled from the soil and stored inside the tree from the previous season. Two elements sit at the absolute center of this process: boron and calcium. Boron helps the pollen tube grow down into the flower so fertilization can actually happen, which directly determines whether that blossom becomes a fruit or just falls off the tree and wastes all that energy. Calcium, on the other hand, is what builds strong cell walls inside the developing fruit, which is why calcium-deficient trees often show fruit drop, cracking, or soft, poorly developed fruit, even when fruit set looked good at first. On top of that, potassium plays a massive role in sugar movement and fruit sizing, which is why trees low in potassium often produce small, less sweet fruit even when everything else looks healthy. Here is the part that really matters for you as a backyard grower. These three elements, boron, calcium, and potassium, are exactly the elements that get depleted fastest in a small, repeatedly used root zone. And they are exactly the elements that most generic fertilizers either skip entirely or include in such tiny amounts that they don't make a real difference. Think about it logically for a second. A general all-purpose fertilizer is built to serve lawns, vegetables, houseplants, and ornamental shrubs all at once. So the ratios are designed to be broad and safe for everything, not specifically tuned to the exact demands of a heavy fruiting stone fruit tree during its most critical reproductive window. That's not the fertilizer company's fault. It's just not what that product was built for. Your tree, on the other hand, is running what is essentially a yearly reproductive cycle far more intense than almost any other plant in your yard, building thousands of blossoms, converting a percentage of them into fruit, and then packing sugar and the structure into that fruit, all within a few short months. That kind of biological output demands a very specific, concentrated mineral supply at very specific windows of time. And that is precisely the gap that generic fertilizing leaves wide open year after year, quietly draining your tree's potential without you ever realizing it's happening until the fruit numbers start dropping. This is where the one spoonful trick comes in, and I want to walk you through it properly instead of just throwing it at you, because doing it wrong can actually stress your tree instead of helping it. Commercial orchard growers, especially in established peach and stone fruit orchards, use a very simple, cheap, and highly effective combination. One spoonful, meaning roughly 1 tablespoon per year of tree age, up to a reasonable cap of a mixture built around borax and Epsom salt applied at very specific times of the year, not randomly whenever you remember. Borax gives the tree the boron it desperately needs for pollen tube growth and fruit set, and Epsom salt supplies magnesium sulfate, which supports chlorophyll production and helps the tree actually use the other nutrients in the soil more efficiently. This combination, used correctly and at the right time, is one of the oldest tricks in commercial stone fruit growing, and it is shockingly underused by home growers who instead spend money on expensive fertilizer blends that don't target the actual deficiency. Let me give you the professional grower approach, broken down into clear steps so you can actually apply this correctly on your own tree, whether it's a peach, a plum, or a cherry, because the timing here matters just as much as the ingredients. Step 1, you want to apply your first spoonful treatment in early spring, right before bud break, while the tree is still dormant but starting to wake up. This is the window where the tree is pulling stored nutrients up from the roots to build those first blossoms, and giving it boron and magnesium right now sets the entire season up for stronger pollination. For a mature tree, roughly 5 years or older, you are looking at about 1 tablespoon of borax mixed thoroughly into 1 gallon of water, poured evenly around the drip line of the tree, which is the area under the outer edge of the canopy, not right against the trunk. For younger trees, 2 to 3 years old, cut that down to about half a tablespoon because young trees can be sensitive to boron if it's over-applied, and more is absolutely not better here. Step 2, roughly 3 to 4 weeks after bloom, once you can see that fruit has actually set on the branches, you apply a second round, this time focusing more on the Epsom salt side, about 1 TBSP of Epsom salt dissolved into a gallon of water, again applied around the drip line. This timing supports the tree during that critical early fruit development stage when it's building cell structure and starting to size up the fruit. Step 3, and this is the step almost everybody skips, about halfway through fruit development. When the fruit is visibly sizing up but still hard and green, you want to do a light foliar spray, meaning you spray it directly onto the leaves rather than the soil, using a very diluted mix, about half a teaspoon of borax dissolved completely in a gallon of water, sprayed lightly over the leaves in the early morning or late evening when it's cooler. Foliar feeding lets the tree absorb that boron rapidly through the leaves, giving it a boost right when it's fighting to hold on to that developing fruit instead of dropping it. Step 4, after harvest, once you've picked your fruit for the season, give the tree one more light spoonful treatment of Epsom salt around the root zone, about 1 TBSP in a gallon of water for a mature tree, because this is the window where the tree is rebuilding its energy reserves for next year's blossoms. And if you skip this step, you're basically starting next season already behind. Now let me walk you through this like I'm standing right in front of the tree with you because I want you to actually be able to look at your own tree and know exactly what you're dealing with. Go stand under your peach or plum or cherry tree right now if you can, and look up into the canopy. If you see blossoms that open up nicely, but a huge number of them are dropping to the ground within a week or two without ever swelling into tiny fruit, that is a classic boron deficiency sign, and that is exactly the pattern this spoonful trick is designed to fix. If instead your blossoms convert into fruit just fine, but by early summer you're noticing fruit dropping off the tree while still small and hard before it ever gets a chance to ripen, that's often a calcium and consistent watering issue layered on top of the same underlying mineral depletion. Look closely at the leaves too. If you notice the older leaves lower in the canopy turning yellow between the veins while the veins themselves stay green, that's a magnesium deficiency talking to you. And that's exactly what the Epsom salt in this treatment addresses directly. I want you to physically run your fingers along a few branches and check the bark too. Because on a tree that's been mineral starved for a couple seasons, you'll often notice the newer growth is thin and weak looking, almost brittle compared to older, healthier growth from years when the tree was fruiting heavy. All of these are field signs, real signs you can check right now, standing under your own tree without needing a lab test or an expert to tell you what's going on. One more thing I want you to check while you're out there. Look at the ground itself around the base of the tree, right at the drip line where you'll eventually be applying this treatment. If that soil is compacted, hard, cracked when dry, or covered in nothing but bare dirt or grass growing right up against the trunk, that's actually working against your tree too, because compacted soil makes it much harder for those fine feeder roots to spread out and access whatever minerals are down there, spoonful treatment or not. Ideally, you want a bit of loose mulch, wood chips, straw, even fallen leaves spread out in a ring around that drip line, not touching the trunk directly, because that mulch layer helps hold moisture evenly, keeps soil temperature more stable, and slowly breaks down to feed organic matter back into that root zone over time. If your tree has bare compacted soil right now, adding a 2 to 3 and layer of mulch around the drip line at the same time you start this spoonful program will genuinely accelerate how well the tree responds. Because you're not just feeding the tree, you're improving the actual environment those roots are working in. Now I want you to actually comment down below because this helps me understand exactly what's going on with your trees and helps other growers watching this too. Tell me in the comments, using the word drop, if your main issue is blossoms or small fruit falling off the tree before harvest, or using the word small if your issue is more that the tree holds fruit just fine, but the fruit stays small or doesn't ripen sweet. I read through these comments and it genuinely helps me figure out what to cover next. Plus, it helps me understand what growers out there are actually struggling with in real backyards, not just in theory. Here's the golden tip, and this is the part that most growers, even ones who have been doing this for years, genuinely don't know. So pay close attention here. Almost everyone applies their spoonful treatment straight into dry soil and just waters it in afterward. But the real trick commercial growers use is applying it into soil that is already lightly moist, never bone dry, and never soaking wet. Because dry soil causes the borax, especially, to concentrate unevenly in pockets, which can actually burn small feeder roots right at the point of contact instead of spreading evenly through the root zone. What you want to do is lightly water the area around your drip line the day before you apply your spoonful mix. Let it soak in overnight and then apply your borax or Epsom salt solution the next day into that slightly damp soil. This one small adjustment in timing dramatically improves how evenly the tree actually absorbs these minerals. And it is the difference between a treatment that works beautifully and one that barely makes a dent, or worse, stresses the tree instead of helping it. Another piece of insider knowledge here: never apply your boron treatment directly against the trunk of the tree. The active feeder roots that actually absorb these nutrients efficiently are out at the drip line, not right at the base. So pouring your mixture right against the trunk is one of the most common wasted efforts I see, because that area is mostly just structural root, not the fine absorbing roots you're trying to feed. Before we wrap this up, let's go over the common mistakes you absolutely need to avoid with this method, because doing this wrong can genuinely hurt your tree instead of helping it. Mistake number one: over applying borax. Boron is one of those nutrients where the gap between just right and toxic is much smaller than most other minerals. So, more is never better here. Stick to the measurements we talked about, and if you're unsure, always underdose slightly rather than overdose, especially on younger trees. Mistake number two: applying this treatment at the wrong time of year, like dumping a big dose of borax in the middle of summer when the tree is already stressed from heat, because that timing can push the tree over the edge instead of supporting it. Stick to the dormant, post-bloom, mid-fruit development, and post-harvest windows we outlined. Mistake number three: treating this as a replacement for regular fertilizing or good watering practices. This spoonful trick targets a specific mineral gap. It is not a complete fertilizing program on its own, so you still need to maintain good baseline soil health, mulch, organic matter, and consistent watering alongside this. Mistake number four: mixing your solution with water that's too hot straight out of the tap, or applying it in the harsh heat of midday sun, both of which can stress the tree and reduce how well the roots or leaves actually absorb what you're giving them. Always use room temperature water and apply either early morning or late evening when things are cooler and calmer. And mistake number five: giving up after just one season. Soil mineral depletion, especially in an established backyard tree, doesn't get fully corrected in a single season. You should expect to see noticeably better fruit set and fruit retention within the first year. But the real dramatic transformation, the kind where your tree goes back to being genuinely loaded with fruit like it was in those first strong years, usually shows up fully by year two of consistent application. Look, growing peaches, plums, and cherries that actually produce heavy, reliable harvests year after year is not about luck. And it's definitely not about buying some expensive miracle product. It comes down to understanding exactly what your tree is starving for and giving it exactly that at exactly the right time. And this spoonful method is proof that some of the most powerful techniques in fruit growing are also the simplest ones, sitting right in your kitchen cabinet, completely ignored by most home growers. If this video helped you understand your tree a little better today, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next real practical grower tip, because I'm putting out new videos every single week built specifically for people who want actual results in their orchard, not just theory. And speaking of what's coming next, in the next video, I'm going to break down the exact pruning mistakes that are silently killing your fruit production, even if your tree looks perfectly healthy right now. And trust me, this is a mistake almost every single backyard grower is making without even realizing it. So make sure you're subscribed and notifications turned on, because you do not want to miss that one. Take care of that tree, feed it what it's actually asking for, and I promise it will reward you with more fruit than you know what to do with. I'll see you in the next video. If this story of revitalizing your orchard changes the way you look at your backyard trees, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the agricultural secrets that have been overlooked for too long. Let's grow a better future together. The next harvest of knowledge will be ready for you very soon.